Hello and welcome back to Bookmark Chronicles. Today I'm going to do my January wrap up. What I learned this month is that while I typically don't have a list of most disappointing reads, I need to start one. This month has been full of disappointments, and that's really unfortunate, but it is what it is, I guess. The first book that I read was The Bride Test. This is the second book in the Kiss Quotient series. I absolutely loved book one. It was one of my favorite reads of last year, and I was really hoping that I would like this one, but I did not. In book one, we're following Michael and Stella. In this book, we are following Michael's cousin Kai. Kai is neurodivergent, and his mother has randomly decided that she's going to set up an arranged marriage for him. Doesn't tell him about it, doesn't consult him at all. In fact, she just shows up to his house with a bunch of groceries, including food that he doesn't eat, and she's like, it's not for you, it's for your fiance. So she met this girl in Vietnam and flew her out to the United States to meet Kai and live with him for the summer, so she has 3 months to get him to fall in love with her. You would think that the fact that one character speaks English and the other speaks Vietnamese, that would be the conflict, that there would be some miscommunication due to a language barrier, but no. Instead, it's lying and keeping a huge secret until pretty much the very end of the book. I'm gonna talk about spoilers for a second. If you are going to read this, skip to this time, but I have to get this off my chest. Not only did she lie about a lot of things like being an accountant, but she kept the fact that she had a child from him basically the entire fucking book. He finds out about the child because he meets the child in like the last fucking chapter. I'm sorry, but that's a big ass secret and the worst way for it to be revealed. I don't understand how that was just accepted. On top of the fact that I also just didn't like the way that Kai was treated by a lot of people and how he thought about himself and how he thought that he couldn't love because he's different, and he just suddenly has this magical revelation and was like, oh, I do love her, wow. And he suddenly starts crying, which he has never done, and he's riding this motorcycle from his best friend, and all of these things happen so quickly. It felt so forced, and I don't want to say that it's unrealistic, but at the same time, that is exactly what it felt like. So I was really hoping that I was gonna like this one. However, I didn't. I rated it 2.75 stars, I think. I am still going to read The Heart Principle. I do think that I'm gonna like that one because a lot of people say that it feels less like a romance because it deals with heavy topics, and I like that. So hopefully that'll work out in my favor. Next, I read The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. I rated this 3.25 stars, I believe. In this, we're following Lena, who is a wedding planner who has been left at the altar. The morning of her wedding, her fiance calls it off. And then 5 years later, she ends up having to work with his brother and competing against him for a job. I'm a wedding planning assistant. I have been for quite some time, so I did enjoy that aspect of it. However, the love interest being the ex-fiance's brother was a little weird for me, and it took me a while to get used to that. There were also tropes in here that I didn't like, though, you know, typical miscommunication, not saying your actual feelings and whatnot, but I think I would definitely pick up something else by this author. Next, I read Homicide and Halo-Halo by Mia P. Manansala. I do have a physical copy, but I'm letting a friend borrow it right now. This is book 2 in the Tita Rosie's Kitchen Cozy Mystery series, which is the only cozy mystery series that I have enjoyed enough to read even this far. I rated it 4.25 stars, and in the first book, we're following Leela and her family at their family-owned restaurant, and a food critic who is known for criticizing them specifically ends up dying in their restaurant, and the family is accused of murder. Book 2 follows the aftermath of that, and I actually enjoyed this one more than the first one, so I'm really looking forward to reading book 3, which I do now have a copy of thanks to Rachel. So I don't know how many books are supposed to be in this series, but I will keep continuing to read them. Next, I read Bound, the final book in the Spider's Mate trilogy by Tiffany Roberts. Unfortunately, this one was also very disappointing. First and foremost, it could have been 100 pages shorter. And then we spend most of the book either traveling through the forest or waiting for this huge battle that has been impending since the first book, and even the battle was a disappointment, I'm not gonna lie. I had such high hopes for this book, and I have been thoroughly let down. This is an alien romance. I do have a drunk book review of the first book, Ensnared, so I'll have that linked. The ending was just really disappointing for me. Will I read another alien romance? I will read Ice Planet Barbarians solely for the sake of making Robin read it with me, so. Next, I read Reaper of Souls by Rena Barron. This is the second book in the Kingdom of Souls series. I don't know if it's supposed to be just a trilogy, but book 3 is coming out this year. Unfortunately, this one was also very disappointing. I rated it 2 stars. In book 1, we were following a young girl who was desperate to gain her own magic, and in book 2, we are seeing the aftermath of everything that happened in that first book. And the first book was so fast-paced, there was so much going on, but in the best way possible. Like, it was never boring. This one was the complete opposite. It was so fucking boring. The first half of this book is so slow, and I know that it's like, you know, everyone's sort of dealing with the repercussions of what has happened. However, I thought that in the second half it would pick back up, and instead of doing that, I mean, it did get a little exciting, but it was mostly the same trick happening over and over again. Again, I'm gonna do some brief spoilers. If you don't want to know anything, skip to this time. But the amount of times that someone was dead and then they came back, then this person is resurrected, but it's not actually them, and everybody's fucking possessed at some point. I cannot do it. We thought Sukar died in the first book, then Ara brings him back to life, then he supposedly dies again, but he's not actually dead. But actually, it's not even him, it's the fucking Demon King in his body. And then at one point, Ara thought that the Demon King had possessed Tyreek. That didn't make any fucking sense. And then Ara has another soul inside of her. Like, why? And then Afi is not dead. She comes back. Like, I can't deal with the back and forth. Rajek is supposed to be dead and then she brings him back too. Like, I don't need 50,000 resurrections. I think what ruined resurrection stories for me was fucking King of Scars. And if I don't have to read another resurrection story in my entire life, it'll be too soon. I do still want to read book 3. I am still holding out hope that it's gonna be good, but we'll see. I'm gonna go into that one with the lowest of expectations. Luckily though, we ended on a high note. This is my highest rated book of the month, and it is the Oleander Sword by Tasha Suri. This is the second book in the Burning Kingdoms trilogy, I believe. I think it's a trilogy. Book 3 should be coming out sometime this year, and I really hope so, because this is really fucking good. I ended up rating this 4.5 stars, and I actually liked it more than the first book. In the first book, we were following a maidservant who has some magical powers and the princess of the empire who has been sent into exile by her brother, the emperor. So again, we are following the aftermath of everything that happens in the first book, but I loved this. However, I will say there was another sort of resurrection that I could have fucking done without. But if you are a fantasy lover and you like magic systems that have to do with plants and living things, then I think you would like this one for sure. I cannot wait to see what happens in the third book, because this one, the way it ended, the betrayal, I loved it. So those are all of the books that I read in January. Hopefully February will be a much better reading month, but let me know if you have read any of these or if they are on your TBR. Otherwise, that's all I have for you today, and I'll see you in the next video.